Is that the right button?
Speaking of buttons, do you remember the game Trouble when we were kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one with, like, the pop-em thing?
Yeah, so I was, like, thinking about this, like, okay, could you get your nipples replaced with a pop-o-matic button? Would that, like, make life more interesting?
I think it would make my life more interesting, because I would sit there at my desk at work and go, pop, 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 pop.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but could I actually get dice put in there to be like, give a shit, don't give a shit, something like that? So people could ask me a question and I'd be like, hold on, let me consult my nipple. Pop, pop. Nope, don't give a shit.
I was just thinking this could be like a high-end alternative to craps. Like, you get this like really hot chick in there and she's all like, let's roll! Snake eyes!
And so what made you think of this? Because I need to know inspiration.
So and this is why the podcast is late. I threw my back out.
And the podcast is late because Vanessa thinks of Trouble pop-up nipples.
And I just couldn't leave the house. I was like trying to figure out how to make that graft stick. No, it's more like Vanessa's been extremely high on painkillers for like a week or two.
Because sciatica is a bitch.
It's actually not sciatica, that's a pinched nerve. I just pulled the crap out of my muscles. It's kind of like I sprained my lower back versus like pinched a nerve.
Yeah, which is not something you use every day to like sit up or move or like really do anything. It's a useless part of your body. You should just cut that part out.
The trouble thing wasn't as disturbing as when I convinced myself that the axolotl I have in my tank, Pinky, is some kind of angel fairy watching over me.
What medicine do they have you on, and can I please have some?
Speaking of strange salamanders that are only in Mexico City, what's the topic today, Katie, for Art, I Swear?
Oh yeah, welcome to the podcast. This is Art, I Swear. I'm Katie Gibbs.
I'm Vanessa Van Alstyne.
And this is the Pre-Columbian takeover. I've gagged and bound Vanessa and tied her to a chair until she realized that I really needed to do a Pre-Columbian podcast. Mostly because in the modernism podcasts we do, she tends to sound like the very intellectual person who understands what she's talking about, and I'm there for witty interludes. And now it is my turn to pronounce things correctly, goddammit.
I get to be the dumbass. I'm extremely proud of myself. This is what my life has led to. So Pre-Columbian, that is like art that is all based in Colombia, like it's all made by Pablo Escobar out of cocaine.
Yes, exactly, except for none of that.
I have been lied to my whole life.
You have, you little modernist artist, you. So, Pre-Columbian art refers to art, artifacts, and textiles left behind from civilizations in the Mexican and South American region.
That's a lot. Why don't they just, like, combine the Americas?
Okay, look. Do you need to have a little horse named, what was his name, Mr. Nibs, out on the pasture? Never mind.
I'm starting to think you're talking about salad fingers, and I'm really scared.
As you should be. So they did divide the Pre-Columbian cultures roughly into Pre-Columbian, which generally refers to South American art, and then Mesoamerican. So that's your Central Mexico all the way through to Central America, and hitting, I think, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Bolivia, somewhere in that region. So today it's actually a really big topic, and we have a lot to survey to go through everything, so I've pared it down, I swear, into we're going to cover the first part of Mesoamerican today. In a future podcast, we'll do second part Mesoamerican, where we'll cover the Maya and the Aztec, but today we're going to do some of the earlier cultures, the Olmec, Teotihaucan, and a couple others.
Now say it with me, kids. Mesoamerican.
Mesoamerican.
There. Now you can sound really fancy at parties. Is that a Mesoamerican brooch?
Yes, I did abscond with it illegally. Please don't tell the U.S. Department of cultural artifacts, they will send it back. We can go into that later, and repatriotism and how all that works. But that will be a different podcast. I did not even try to touch that today.
I will say that we're discussing antiquities, and if you've had Art 1301 and fallen asleep, you kind of know a little bit of what you're in for, but we're going to try to make it interesting, just like we try to make everything.
I will say that the reason I like it so much, and the reason I wanted to focus on it, was you're looking at societies that are right on that tipping point between just subsisting and thriving. So you get to see what are their first tangible expressions of art that they're able to create now that they're able to thrive. So, and it's really interesting what they're able to do with all that, I won't say free time, but free time, free resources, enough resources that they didn't have to sit there and go out farming all the time or go out hunting all the time just to live. So that's why it's cool for me. Like, because
I like
reasons.
the internet and Facebook and flushing toilets.
Don't get me wrong. I love flushing toilets.
It's great.
I love the internet. I tolerate Facebook.
Yay, air conditioning.
Oh god, we live in Texas. Some things are a necessity, my friend. So for Mesoamerican, there's actually a pretty simple timeline. South American has a little bit screwier timeline, but we'll look at Mesoamerican today. Your timeline is roughly divided into time periods, which are pre-classic, classic, and post-classic.
Yeah, that sounds like what they did with, like, Greece.
Yeah.
And Rome, and if back when you're 1301.
Right, so what did we have? Pre-classic, classic, and then there was that one where everybody's super angsty and emotional. That used to be my favorite. That's where the Lacan came from.
Yeah, and everybody looks like a Rob Liefeld drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've got muscle upon muscle upon muscle.
Dun-dun! Right.
It's so real, it's super real.
So, pre-classic / Paleo-Indian. So Paleo-Indian runs from 10,000 to 3,500 BCE. That's before what we're talking about. We're not going to have any artifacts in that area.
And if you're going, is that like BC when I was a kid, before Christ? They now call it before the Common Era.
Right.
And the Common Era, because Jesus wasn't born at the year 0. That's
a common misconception. Although when the Gregorian monks who did that calendar, they weren't that far off. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but surprisingly, for the data that they had, they didn't miss it by that much.
I guess it's like they worshipped that dude and wanted to be as accurate as possible, huh?
Wow.
Oh, shoot.
That's deep.
Oh.
So, your archaic / pre-classic era runs from about 1200 BCE to 200 CE. Your classic runs from 200 to 900, and post-classic runs from about 900 to 1580. When we start getting really specific, because that's when, your invasions start happening, Spain decides that South America and Mexico is filled with gold, and it must be theirs, because obviously the indigenous people didn't need it.
El Dorado.
And, oh, by the way, here's the site of smallpox. Would you like to die now? Along with 75% of your civilization?
Nobody appreciates smallpox anymore.
Yeah, pity that. So, if you ever look these timelines up, you're gonna find some differing numbers, and part of that has to do with carbon dating, part of that has to do with different scholarship, part of that has to do with botany, believe it or not. I'm not gonna go into it because we don't have, 5 hours for me to...
Didn't the Spanish also, loot and burn a lot of historical documents because Jesus? Because Jesus.
Yeah. Also, we're talking about areas, that are overrun by jungle, so a lot of stuff has just been eaten away.
Yeah, humidity is not archival.
No, and the good thing about this, I guess, is that they're finding so many more now that we're doing Google imaging and satellite mapping and all this, so we can find more areas where they have pyramids and stuff like that have been hidden. But we also have to deal with treasure hunters and...
Yeah, it's kind of like we're about to talk about the Olmecs. Spoiler. Like a cool side note, I come from a lot of, like, oil people, and one of my grandfathers was actually stationed in Guatemala looking for wells out in the jungle during the 50s, and when he was there, he worked with an archaeological survey team so that if they came across one of the big heads looking for places to drill wells, they would, like, make a note of the geolocation and then show the archaeologists where it was. And as kind of a thank you, the archaeologists would just let them, like, pick up little shards and stuff and keep them. And this was before there was a bunch of laws about that. So my grandfather has a box of, like, pottery shards and figurines that he took from Guatemala, and a jaguar skin. That's going to be fun when we get older. when they pass, we gotta prove that thing was legally imported. But yeah.
Yep.
And he said that the natives love to eat the monkeys, but he couldn't do it because it looked like roasting babies.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Oh, honey.
Yeah.
That's... My husband actually knew a guy, also in oil, who, in the 50s and 60s, went out, as you do, and he collected a lot of artifacts then that he shouldn't have now, but they were so pretty. Including, like, a sacrificial bowl from the Mayans that doesn't exist. So,
yeah, well, it wasn't illegal at that point in time. We still have that
correct.
Imperialistic view that we were the dominator culture and we were the wise great white warriors and that we could just kind of take whatever we want.
Well, because obviously they're not caring for it the way that we could.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't know it was there. So...
And they didn't realize the value it had to other civilizations.
Correct. So, back to Olmec. I will talk on this forever. So the Olmec civilization, there were some civilizations before this, but this is the one that really was the precursor for your Maya, for your Aztec, for all the other ones that came through. Their civilization was from about 1200 to 400 BCE. They were in the Gulf of Mexico area, right around in Mexico now would be like the states of Veracruz and Tabasco, which is actually a state, not just a sauce.
Yeah, I'm excited, and not just in the tongue to know that.
Dirty. Evidence of trade from the Olmec has actually been found as far south as Nicaragua.
You say that fancy.
Lots of practice. And Olmec in Aztec means rubber people.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers?
Rubber baby buggy bumpers. You should teach my little boy that. He'll love it. His favorite right now is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Oh no, I don't think I can handle that.
Oh, he's adorable.
He is. It's painful.
You'll find a lot of these civilizations have been named by the Aztec, and they don't actually have their own names associated with their civilization anymore.
I think that's like in North American Native Americans, isn't it? The Anasazi, that's not actually their name, but we've lost the records of what
their name actually were called, right? So they didn't really have a system of writing, but they had repeated pictographs that scholars are trying to figure out, but they haven't cracked that code yet. So the easiest art, I guess you would associate with the Olmec would be the giant heads. And when I say giant, I mean colossal.
Yeah.
I mean, like, tons of basalt rock.
There's a reason my grandpa was geotagging those back in the day and not actually pulling them out because...
Yeah, no, they're like 3 meters high and they can weigh up to 8 tons.
Yeah, isn't basalt, that's a fairly hard rock.
It's really dense.
It's hard to carve.
Yes.
Like, is that a volcanic rock?
I believe so, but you're talking to the wrong Gibbs on this one.
Yeah, we're not... Grandpa's a geologist, not me.
Husband is environmental scientist.
Yeah.
He's in Purville right now.
So yeah, these are really dense, heavy stones, and they had to have been really hard to carve, that just makes it all the more impressive for way back in the day.
And they also have very distinct facial features. So they think that these were actual rulers or actual religious leaders, and they carved out that ruler or religious leader's face, and it was possibly used as either a marker or a protector or some sort of the city, because you'll find in some of the layouts that they're on the outskirts of the city, like depending on where they're facing.
And whenever you look at them, they tend to have what looks like a helmet or some kind of headdress on. They have kind of almond-shaped eyes, very flat nose, usually kind of large lips. You can kind of see, if native Mexicans from southern Mexico, if you've ever seen them, it's that they look like these heads.
They have a little bit of that Mayan feature to it, where it's the cheekbones and the nose, especially, you can see it.
That's one of the things that always amuses me, is people lose their minds about people from Mexico moving into, like, Texas and New Mexico, and it's like, they were native to here.
They lived here before us.
Yeah,
you know that, right?
And took the land from them.
So, like I said before, the Olmec predated most of the Mesoamerican cultures, but they also influenced most of them. So you're gonna see the animalistic gods, you're gonna see the ball court. There's evidence of ball court playing. They don't actually have any of the rubber balls left anymore because...
Oh, why not?
Thousands of years have passed.
So is this the area where rubber comes from? Because I know that's a fairly modern thing, and it comes from a specific plant, so I'm guessing rubber trees.
The rubber trees are down there, yeah.
Okay.
So, and you'll see it, I think some of the later civilizations that we're going to talk about today, but also in the Maya, that those rubber balls that they use to play their game, Nahuatl or something like that, it's, that stuff's serious, like, super dense. They don't actually have the correct sizes. They found some ceremonial buried balls, but the actual game had a lot of religious significance, and people were put to death over it, and...
Yeah, there's an interesting link. There's a lot of things we get from this part of the world that are normal now. Like, I think potatoes and tomatoes come from... and corn, obviously.
Right.
So, thank you, pre-Columbian people, for all this great food and rubber.
That the Spain then took over and called their own. Thank you, the Spain and the Portugal. I have no brain today. The other thing we're gonna see from the Olmec that transcended into later cultures would be the stepped pyramid. One of the major cities of the Olmec was La Venta, which, if you ever have a chance, look it up. It looks really cool. You're gonna see stepped pyramids there. It's actually, right now, it looks like a mound of dirt.
Yeah, it's like if somebody covered one of the Great Pyramids in dirt.
Right. Well, I mean, you're talking about something that
Except it's in the jungle.
It's in the jungle, and it's thousands of years old, so it has been reduced, we will say.
Reduced.
Do you want to read what the Met actually described of La Venta, or do you want me to? How are you doing here today?
Let's see here.
It's a long one, I'm sorry.
Though some of the northern sector of the site was destroyed by modern construction, it is known that the ceremonial heart of La Venta was assigned to 8 degrees north, probably for astronomical reasons. 3 colossal heads facing north served to mark the northern periphery. At some 30 meters tall, the Great Pyramid divides the site into northern and southern sectors. Access to the northern ceremonial precinct of Complex A was probably limited to the elite, who may have lived on the largely unexcavated
Sterling Acropolis.
The southern sector, Complex B, includes a large plaza where numerous whole and fragmentary monuments have been discovered. It probably served as the primary staging area for rituals performed by La Venta's rulers. So how big is this in comparison to the pyramids at Giza that everybody knows?
The pyramids of Giza are big, but they're not as big as you think. Because, you know, we always see them in pictures.
Yeah.
We don't actually see them up close. I don't know size, but when we start talking about the Mayans, and some of the later pyramids we'll see, even the pyramids of the sun and the moon and Teotihaucan, I mean, they're significantly large. This took a lot of manpower to make happen.
And I will say there's some cursors that sociologists use to mark how advanced the culture is, and the ability to build step pyramids is actually one of them that is a fairly advanced culture at that point.
Well, and you'll see, too, that a lot of these cultures had a good knowledge of astronomy and a good knowledge of how the stars align, north, south, and they organized their cities that way. And to the point that scholars now are still shocked that they were able to do that 2,000-3,000 years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say, us people with British ancestry lose our minds about Stonehenge, and this is equally, if not more so, impressive.
Right. Because, so, also, what you need to think of, these civilizations are running parallel to the European civilizations. So by the time that Spain invaded, they were quite advanced. They were just different.
Yeah, wasn't Mexico City is a floating city, basically. The Aztecs had set it up to where...
Yep.
So yeah, it
was swampy marshland.
They just didn't cover their bits enough for the Spanish.
Pretty much, and they didn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
They didn't have Jesus.
There's the mark of civilization right there.
Yeah, that's your European mark. So, I promise we'll move on soon. I swear, I'm really trying not to bore you. But the last bit of Olmec artwork that we'll talk about today is the Kunz Axe. Kunz. And do you want to describe this before I read our description?
First off, I want to say it sounds like a piece of furniture from Ikea.
The Kunin. Thank you, Ryan.
Kunz Axe shelf.
Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool.
Lamp.
I want the Kunin. I will tell you that it is, I believe, made of jade or jadeite.
I was surprised that jade. I didn't know it existed in that part of, but whatever.
Different strain.
I mean, it's a rock. Rocks can get formed anywhere under the right conditions. Rocks is rocks is rocks. There's some geologists somewhere like crying and peeing themselves because I said that.
I can call a few if you want.
No, it's all right.
All right.
I've embarrassed myself enough. Okay, so it is a piece of it's green jade, but it's not that like vivid green that's kind of transparent that is really valuable in like Asian art. It's got like some veins and stuff that are white. It's like a little trapezoidal body almost, or like kind of angled, shaped like an axe head, and then like there's a little man head with almond eyes and what almost looks like a predator mouth. So the axe is known as it's either the jaguar or a were-jaguar, or my favorite is the howling baby axe, because this is accurate. It really looks like it's like predator baby. Yes. Yeah. It was a ceremonial axe head. Probably it's been theorized that it could have been a religious leader of some significance, who transcended into something and then was memorialized in this axe. Because aren't there like, and this is me talking out of my butt, there's later like gods and stuff in the other civilizations in this area that turn into jaguars or were jaguars. A lot of the gods and goddesses, the pantheon that each of these civilizations adopt, all of them are animal based. Jaguars were of big significance to anyone with royalty, noble blood, something like that. That was a big deal. And then religion and politics were also intertwined. So to have political influence, you had to have some touch with the gods. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. I love the Talking Heads. Yes. So what happened around 400 BCE, Katie?
The Olmec were destroyed!
So this is like a conspiracy theory with like UFOs or some kind of like mass ascension of enlightened beings.
I think your hair needs to be at least a foot more off your head for you to start talking like this.
Aliens.
You can't see it, but her imitation is spot on.
My uncle, who's a biochemist, like started texting me one day because he doesn't get sick often, but when he did, and he's like, what the hell is Ancient Aliens, and why is this man on TV? And he was just, like, obsessed with it. And then he's all like, we're gonna have a symposium at Berkeley, and I want to try to get him as the keynote speaker.
Oh, please, can I go?
I think they said no.
Damn it. So, my husband likes to torture me with Ancient Aliens, because I hate that man with a fiery passion of 1,000 suns.
Aliens!
They didn't have all the distractions that we have today, you know, with the internet and our phones and 500 other things just buzzing at us constantly. So, of course, they had the time and the inclination and, yes, the technology to figure out how to build these goddamn things, and it wasn't goddamn aliens.
Yeah, never underestimate really bored people.
Exactly. So, like we said, 400 BCE, the Olmec civilization gets destroyed. The likely candidate is warfare. Warfare, of course, was a common thing for the Mesoamerican and Pre-Columbian civilizations. It had, a lot of religious significance, you know.
Well, and I think it's always important to remember Occam's razor. Occam's razor.
Thank you.
Razor. Did I mention I'm stoned on painkillers?
Not enough, apparently.
Oh, man.
Honey. Do you need, like, a hot towel?
I'm good.
Hot
Don't
pad?
just shut up and do the podcast.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. What was I saying? Occam's razor. The simplest explanation tends to be correct. And when it comes to these old civilizations, look at what has happened to more modern ones. Regime changes, different heirs, new religions, disease,
Drought.
better places to live and farm. There's
any number of things.
Yeah, it's usually like 8 or 9 or a billion different little things that then lead to things shifting. And these people didn't totally go away. They evolve into other cultures.
Not aliens.
It's not aliens.
Jesus.
It's not lizard people. There is no Hollow Earth. Please, I would love to get in a fight with a Hollow Earther, please.
Are they the same people that do the, chemtrails?
Probably. It's conspiracy theory nutbags. I love but hate them.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Let's go to Teotihaucan.
The Mystery City!
That's right! And I realize we're jumping ahead about 400 years. I'm sorry. Teotihaucan, peak of it...
You have to explain what happened year by year for those 400 years.
Okay, look, we've only got... I don't know how long we've been recording, but,
yeah.
we don't have enough time for that. There were... And I can go back, and if you ever want to discuss this with me, please talk to me, because I love talking about this. But there were a lot of little civilizations in between here. We're trying to hit the high notes. I'm really sorry. So... Teotihuacan hit its peak somewhere between 0 and about 600 to 650 CE. So,
say it with me again, kids. Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan.
By the way, I discovered my husband can't roll R's.
Oh no. Oh god, I went Michigander. Oh no.
Oh no. Well, that's where he's from.
That explains it.
No Spanish blood in that boy.
Lo siento. Lo siento.
Cerveza, por favor.
Una más margarita. Donde está el baño? Teotihuacan is located about 50 kilometers north of Mexico City, 30 miles-ish. It's in that Central Mexican basin area, so it actually had a lot of runoff, and it wasn't desert area. It was actually, they had plenty of water, they had plenty of resources, and they built this amazing city. They don't know anything about the civilization that built it. They didn't really have a writing system except for to record dates and names. There's not a lot of information there, but they had amazing works of art, and the way they laid their city out is beautiful. They have, we're going to talk, I think, only about a couple of things today. Probably the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon, but they had these amazing, highly detailed frescoes. It's in this stylized art, of course.
So what culture would you compare this to in, like, Honky Land? Like, at what point are we in, like, Greece?
My Grecian timeline is completely shot. We're talking about Roman era, I think.
Okay, well, at this point, at like 0 to 600 CE, we are talking about the decline of the Roman civilization.
Right, so Greece is long gone.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, like, are these things more like pre-classical era Greek, or...
I think we're at, like, end of pre-classical and into like, on that dividing line in Greek.
Mind you, these people might have lived better than that. Their artwork is still what we call stylized, which is like old school abstract.
Right.
So when we say it was a stylized thing, they're probably trying to make it realistic.
They don't have, like, that beautiful 3/4 portraiture that you get from Leonardo da Vinci and so on. I mean, it's not realistic in any way. Their portrayal of the human form is figural.
Well, and I don't think that there is marble in
No.
Mexico, which is one of the things that made it to where...
Because it's a very soft material.
Yeah, it's easy to carve, so you're dealing with things like jade, which are actually pretty hard.
Pretty dense. Basalt
is
very dense.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were going to carve that now, you'd use something that's diamond-tipped.
Anywho. Teotihaucan in Aztec is the place of the gods. Sorry about that. I just decided to hit the table for no reason.
It's okay, I kicked it earlier. I'm not even apologizing. Screw all you.
The city covers roughly 20 square kilometers, and around its peak it would have housed about 100,000 people. Like, let's take that in for a second, because that's a lot of freaking people.
Especially for like, 1900.
Yeah, pre-industrial civilization.
Because, like...
That's
I mean,
a lot
you're
of
talking
waste.
about, like, the plague kills most of England and it's like 600,000 people.
Right.
There are not cities with 1 million people in them.
Just one 20-kilometer area, 100,000. Just think of the waste. And they had to be able to get rid of all that so they could still live. And the food and the resources. Teotihuacan roughly ran parallel to early Maya. It's a little too early for Toltec. It's too late for Olmec. So we're not sure what civilization really built this area.
Did the Toltec invent tollways?
No, Satan did.
I'm not going to argue.
Yes. Also taxes. Taxes. Sorry. Their writing style, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's a little simpler than the Mayan cuneiform.
I'm going to make you shut up right now. The word spider goddess is right here. Yeah, you need to explain. Spider goddess, let's go.
So the most of the pantheons for your Mesoamerican civilizations were a male-dominated pantheon. Teotihuacan's main goddess was a spider goddess, and it ran... it was beautiful.
So these are the drow. This is what happened.
Yeah,
this is the drow from D&D.
Yeah, these are the drow from Faerun, and Dris de Erden is the only one who survived.
Oh.
So look up Faerun, people. I am crazy, but at least I know what I'm talking about. They also, one of my favorites was Tlaloc, the rain god. You should look up an image of him, Google it, Tlaloc. Tlaloc. Primary sources of goods would have been the obsidian deposits in a nearby
Yeah, obsidian is another thing that's really hard to... That's volcanic glass. It's hard to carve, mostly because it's weirdly brittle.
But it also makes very great axe heads and surgical tools and arrowheads. Mm-hmm. And it can actually cut so fine that it cuts in between the cells and doesn't rip them.
And if you're like thinking, oh man, wasn't that in Oblivion? Yes, obsidian glass, it's real. Like, the fantasy guys didn't make that one up. It's just not forged by dragons.
Back in the 80s, when my husband went to Mexico City, and he was actually at Teotihaucan, I've seen pictures, he managed to purchase a big, huge obsidian knife with this, like, cheap green handle, and we have had it up on the mantle, I think up to 2 months ago, and it would have been perfect to show Vanessa now, and I can't find it.
I don't want to see it. You'll just cut me with it.
Not wrong. So... Pyramid of the Sun, Pyramid of the Moon, Pyramid. I can't talk.
These are step pyramids, and okay, what we're talking about when we say step pyramids, they're built similarly to how the Giza pyramids are, and where it's like large chunks of stone, but step pyramids have different levels.
Right.
So instead of just being like that smooth triangle, there's like different chunks. It looks more like the ones you see in what was like Babylon, which is now Iran and Iraq and
right. There's actually some really cool parallels to those if you ever put them side by side. There's no credible evidence to say that there was any trade in between those.
I've heard some people think that the Egyptian civilization somehow managed to get to these civilizations and that some of the information was exchanged that way.
It's a little far-fetched, but I won't exclude it from reality yet.
And maybe someday, like, DNA testing can deny or confirm that.
Right.
But I think some of this is, when it comes to Africa, Egypt is the one country that you forget is African. Because I feel like Europe kind of claimed it as its own because so much early European history is intertwined with Africa, or Egypt specifically, because they were such a advanced civilization early on.
Well, and looking at every single movie Hollywood has put out that refers to Egypt, you don't see black people in them.
Yeah, and
very rarely.
And don't you come at me with, oh my god, Cleopatra was mostly Greek. Yeah, I know that, but look at frickin' King Tut's mask. That is a black man. He has thick lips, he's got the broader nose, the slightly more pronounced brow. He's a good-looking black dude.
Well, and you're also talking, probably, again, my timeline's going to be off because it has been forever and a day since I've studied it.
Tut's before this.
Way before then, too. I mean, the Greeks really did try to take over Egypt, and that's a whole nother podcast, which I would love to do with you someday.
Hold on. I'm petting my lover. Her cat Mouse.
My cat, named Mouse, is Vanessa's new boyfriend.
He's my boyfriend and he knows it.
So the city itself actually has a precise grid pattern for the layout, which the layout itself was oriented, 15.5 degrees east of true north.
Well, that was completely on accident because these heathens don't know what they're doing. She just hit me. I want you to know.
And with my mind. The pyramids of the sun and the moon are located at the northern end of the Avenue of the Dead. Yes, it's called that. It's amazeballs, and you should look it up sometime.
But these are names that were given later. We don't know what they actually called them.
Still, Avenue of the Dead.
Okay, all right. Jesus,
they are the drow. They had a spider queen.
You're gonna be upset if someday they find out that it was like the happy, lucky pathway of good fortune.
No, I'm gonna run down it up and down until good fortune happens upon me.
You're just gonna wear
naked.
Katie, you'll burn into bacon. What are you thinking?
I try not to. It's overrated. I actually have a very long excerpt from the Ancient History Encyclopedia on the pyramids. I'm gonna try to condense it as much as possible. But the 5 level but bear with me because it actually has a lot of good information in it. The 5-level Pyramid of the Sun was actually built over a much earlier sacred tunnel cave, which had a natural spring. Like I said, they had a lot of resources then.
Hey, Katie, do you want to see my tunnel cave?
Again?
No, well. That's just for me and Mouse.
The structure, constructed around 100 CE, has 6 platforms and measures about 215 meters along the sides. Just along the sides. And it's about 60 meters high. So, how tall is that? I need references.
A meter it's
3 feet?
It's about a yard. It's a little more, so... that'd be about 120 feet, give or take.
Ouch. No!
Did you just hear?
I pushed buttons. Okay, no, I'm fine now. I'm
Her
done.
smartphone isn't so smart.
No, it's just user error.
So this thing's like 120 yards, feet high.
Feet.
And one of the biggest structures ever built in the ancient Americas. And that's pretty impressive for... I think that Gothic cathedrals top out at about 250 feet.
Right.
So...
This is intense.
A little less than half of the biggest Gothic cathedral that you can make.
So the present exterior would have been covered in a smooth lime plaster, but obviously this is worn away because, again, we're thousands
if anybody has a house with plaster walls, you'll know that plaster
doesn't last that long.
Oh, it's the devil's material.
But it was built over this mud and brick rubble interior, and it's a lot like the Egyptians did, where it's filled with this, like, brick grit waste. Almost.
Yeah, because the pyramids at Giza were covered in a, like, slick limestone. They were at one point, like, shiny white.
Oh, yeah. They would have blinded you. Intentionally, actually. The top ones had a small temple structure, which would have been reached by a flight of stone stairs climbing up the entire pyramid, which was split and rejoined higher up. So basically, you would climb upstairs, you'd reach a plateau, you would climb up more stairs, you'd reach a plateau, all the way till you get to the top of this temple.
Yeah, remember we said this is a step pyramid because it's kind of like 3 chunky sections?
We're not talking about the outside, which is kind of rubbly and looks stepped just because of the exterior. We're talking about the plateaus.
Mm-hmm.
So, the pyramid... Where are we? Inside of the pyramid is a 100-meter long tunnel which leads from beneath the outside staircase to a 4-winged chamber, which has been looted but probably once had a burial chamber or a shrine. Looting is a very... Sorry, that's my dog. So the Pyramid of the Moon is very similar to, but smaller than, the Pyramid of the Sun. The present exterior covers 6 progressively smaller pyramids. It was constructed about 150 CE, and there's no inner chamber, as unlike the Sun Pyramid. Braining is hard.
So it's just solid. But the foundations did contain many dedicatory offerings, such as obsidian and greenstone felines and eagles, and one singular person. And a single person offering, so it would have been carved out of something. I was confused because there's actually 3 males buried around the body, too. The accompanying precious jade objects around their body suggested they were important Maya nobles. There's also remains of sacrificed animals, including pumas, rattlesnakes, and birds of prey. So, do they think that this was like a burial chamber that became a ritual site for a king?
Well, Teotihaucan held significance long past the civilization left it.
Mm-hmm.
Mayan nobles would go pilgrimage there. There was one, I can't think of his name now. It was actually a well-known name of a Mayan king, or an Aztec king, that would go there and regularly because that's where the gods would speak to him. So it still held significance long past people lived in that area. But about,
I'm guessing that makes the original intent kind of muddied.
Yes.
Especially since they didn't have a known written history.
Correct. Also of note that the structure of the pyramids, so you're in the basin, right? You're in the central Mexican area basin. There's mountains kind of surrounding it to the north. If you're looking at these pyramids from the Avenue of the Dead, there are two mountains behind it, and these pyramids actually mirror the mountains. We don't know if that's intentional or not, but it could explain why the Pyramid of the Moon is not exactly similar to the Pyramid of the Sun.
So this was a highly evolved civilization. If they're doing that,
right.
They probably have advanced politics. I know later the Aztecs had, like, rudimentary, like, sewer systems, and I mean, they created a floating city.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and this is part of what's sad about this period of history, is the Spanish came in and destroyed the history of a lot of civilizations that we probably could have benefited from learning from.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, if you look at old depictions, and this is part of why I hate using the words like savage or primitive or even Indian, because they're not Indians, they're not from India.
Dots, not feathers.
You're putting moral aspersions onto a culture that's
not your own.
It's just, basically, savage just meant not European. It's like pagan meant not Christian. It's, you don't, just because they aren't wearing, like, a dress that covers everything from the ankle up doesn't mean that they're...
Right. Well, they're also living in an area that is much hotter, much more humid, and doesn't support that kind of clothing. Really, it doesn't.
A wool dress makes sense in Scandinavia. It does not in sub-Saharan anything.
Oh, I can only imagine. So, Teotihaucan also produced some really great sculpture. They were made in jade or basalt or greenstone with details in shell or obsidian. They also, I think I mentioned it before, these frescoes that they painted, these paintings in the sides of their temples, on the inside. It was in pure fresco with plaster and everything, and it has stood the test of time. It is very stylized. It is also very graphic. So before you start looking this up, you may want to look it up before you show your children, or you get to explain, why is that man dripping blood from his penis into a bowl? Whee!
I used to work for a chain of, like, hippie import products, and we had these, like, carved out door things we were selling, and they had these, like, posters of famous places in the world, and one of them was it was a shot looking down from one of those temples down to the alley, and I was all like, did they not realize that they used to, like, sacrifice people and let the blood drip down that? Like,
that's
it really happened. And we know that because these frescoes exist. And I will also add that, like, you're talking about frescoes that are potentially 2,000 years old, that they're still intact is impressive. That's something that's, you know, European art from this period doesn't always survive. So,
right.
If we're comparing cultures again, this is about on par with where medieval Europe was for the most part. Because they lost all of their advances from, like, Roman Greece because Jesus.
Jesus didn't want them to know that.
It wasn't Jesus' fault. It was...
Technically, it was the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I don't want to get in a religion war here, but yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna fight with you, but I don't want the comments.
Trolls, be gone!
That summons them, don't say that.
There's nothing I can say that will fix this, so I will move on. The city was intentionally set ablaze about 600 to 650 CE. And everybody just dispersed. Like, boom, fire, gone.
So there was a necromancer, and he got Nero and put him on a boat and was like, hey man, play your fiddle.
I'm gonna say that because the city was the drow. They finally didn't make the sacrifices correctly to hold the sun from burning their skin, And they all pretty much, one day the sacrifice wasn't done correctly, the sun hit their skin, and they all set on fire.
Nero went down to Teotihaucan, he brought his awful fiddle.
Oh,
I'm going to hell.
You are. It was likely due to a lower class versus upper class struggle, or drought, or war, pretty much anything that...
Like the French Revolution, knock down the Bastille, execute the royals, burn the city.
Right. So this is actually going to bring part 1 of the Pre-Columbian takeover to a close.
Tell us how much you hate this in the comments, or on YouTube, or
how much you love it, because I'm fabulous. And this was my focus. And I'm pretty sure I just made every Pre-Columbian professor I ever had cringe in their boots for listening to this. I am so sorry.
They're probably more mad that you're letting me make stupid comments.
They're probably more mad that I'm probably getting things wrong. Don't fact check.
No, fact checker, please.
If you liked this, please make notes in the comments. I do plan on taking over every once in a while and doing more of this. Also, we are planning on doing some artist interviews coming up, just to kind of shake things up a little, get our format moving. I can't think of anything else that we have going on. Do you have any other housekeeping we need to address?
I am going to try to do interviews about once a month. Sometimes it may be both of us. Sometimes maybe one at a time.
She has more artist contacts than me because she actually deals with art in the real world, where I deal with pot shards. So the people I would interview would probably put y'all to sleep. And I love you for it because y'all are awesome and you keep me on my toes. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, we're gonna get back on the regular schedule. We're gonna get Vanessa all doped up so we can continue this. If you have any suggestions or comments, please email us. It's artiswear@gmail.com. You can comment below. You can set your head on fire. We may not be able to answer the head on fire messages, but, we appreciate them.
If your head's on fire, call 911. I don't want to hear about it. ArtIswear is... Well, our intro and outro is done by Joe Giggs. He's
fantabulous.
Yeah, he's a DJ up in New York. I can't really make a Mesoamerican joke out of that.
He's not dead.
He's not cutting his penis with pottery shards.
He's not sacrificing penis blood, but he will make you some awesome music if you contact him.
The musics and the samples are from the Conan Project, edited by Jillian Gomez. Check out her band, The Flying Buttresses. Speaking of which, Jillian, I did not see you when we were in Austin, and it made me sad because you didn't hunt me down, and I was heartbroken. I think she might have been in Baltimore with her brother. Anyways. The one time I go attack Austin for AustinCon. By the way, if any of you nerds out there want to talk to me about Comic-Con, please do, because I will talk a lot. Yes. Pop-O-Matic bubble.